So, Namaskaram, and let's get started with today's class where we're going to talk about British administration and the policies pre 1857 era. And this is going to be very important class if you are an aspirant or you're preparing for any examination. This is the topic from where you'll get a lot of questions. Every year, at least 1 to 2 questions is guaranteed from this topic. That is what I can assure you. So you should not miss it. If you really want to understand this topics, we are going to go in a very easy language for you to understand. Just imagine, for a fun fact, that tomorrow if Amazon, yes, Flipkart, Amazon, that gives you, that sells you products tomorrow, if it gets the rights of revenue collection, if it start collecting the GST in India, and tomorrow with that GST collection again it starts to purchase the goods also from India, and then it starts selling it to the outer world. Do you believe that this can really happen? Is it possible? Yes, it was possible while the era of Britishers started to collect taxes from Indians, and that money which they were getting from Indians, with that money they were buying Indian goods, and those Indian goods were sold outside India. It was sent to Britain, it was sent to the another places, and they were getting profit from that. But here is a question mark. Who was at loss? Indians were obviously at loss, but the East India Company was also at loss. Now there is a big question. Indians were at loss, that can be understood, but because we were also paying the taxes to the Britishers, and our goods were also being purchased very cheaply by them. But why the East India Company was at loss? East India Company should have been in a lot of profit. But there is something that we'll see today. Okay, and because of that only we will see the first regulating act will come in India. All of that we will see. But if you want the PDF of these classes for free, yes, absolutely free, you can join the Telegram channel of Shikara Academy official channel. And also, if you are preparing for TSPSC or you are preparing for UPSC, right now we have just started our foundation batch, and you can call on the numbers given below to get started, and you should not delay your preparation. That's what I believe. Nonetheless, let's get started. So we have been continuing this series. This is a complete modern history series that we have started. We have already seen the advent of Europeans, and after that we have seen some regional kingdoms that were very important, and in exams you're going to get a lot of questions from these regional kingdoms. We have already seen all those, and now after the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar, when the Diwani rights are now with the Britishers, and also they are looking for the Nijamat rights. Now if you're confused, what's Diwani rights? It's the revenue rights. Nijamat, it's the administrative rights. We have already discussed it in our last classes, so you can go there. And also if you want the PDF of those classes, that is available for free on our Shikara Academy channel. And also a very quick info to you. If you have any question regarding your preparation, you can call on the numbers given below, and you can talk to any educator. Whatever your question is there, you can throw it at. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing first, the dual government system that started from the 1765-1772. So if you have gone through the Battle of Buxar, you should know that Battle of Buxar happened in 1764, and in 1765 there was this treaty. This treaty marked the dual government system of East India Company. The treaty was Treaty of Allahabad, where the company acquired the Diwani rights. What's Diwani rights? The revenue collection rights of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. The Nawab retained the Nijamat rights. What was the Nijamat rights? Once again, the Nijamat right is the administrative and judicial functions. Okay, but it became dependent on the company for military and the financial support at that time. You should remember two important names here. Muhammad Reza Khan has served as Naib Diwan for Bengal, and Raja Sitab Roy, he also served as Naib Diwan for Bihar, acting as the intermediaries between the Britishers and the Bengal government or the Bihar government. The system allowed the company to control revenue without direct administrative responsibility, but it led to the Bengal famine of 1770. Now just see, they have got the Diwani rights in the year 1765. Bengal famines in 1770. Now, mainly you will think that a famine arises because of natural calamities. Okay, but this famine that we are talking about, it is believed that this was an artificial famine which was created. And why it was an artificial famine, we will see. So the system proved disastrous, with neither the company nor the Nawab caring for public welfare, ultimately contributing to the widespread administrative failure and economic distress. So the Nawab did not have the Diwani rights, so he can't have any power over the revenue. The Britishers were having the Diwani rights. They did not care about the Indians. So the Nawab doesn't has the power. Who has the power? He doesn't cares about Indians. So why not a famine will occur? So this is something that you should understand. Nonetheless, let's get started with the very first act. The Regulating Act of 1773 represents the first direct parliamentary intervention in company affairs. So there are very quick points related to it. We'll see all the other points. It's already in the slides. Again, I am repeating, if you want it for free, you can join our Telegram channel. Creation of Governor General of Bengal. So it was the Regulating Act of 1773 by which Warren Hastings became the first Governor General with an executive council of 4 members. Now it's an important point. Many of the exams you'll get these questions asked. Okay, so you should remember this. The centralization of authority. Governors of Madras and Bombay were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. What it proves? It also proves that, hello Bharat official, it also proves that the governors of the Madras and Bombay presidencies were not that important. Bengal was at the most important at that time, okay, because Bengal was giving lot more revenue in comparison to all the other provinces. Now, Supreme Court was also established by this Regulating Act of 1773 that was established at Fort William in Calcutta in 1774 with Sir Elijah Impey as the Chief Justice. Now, you should remember this. This is an important point. Very good evening, Lipi Sharma. Anti-corruption measures. Company servants were prohibited from private trade and accept bribes, and parliamentary oversights were there. The company was required to submit detailed reports on Indian affairs to the British government, but here something was missing. What was missing? Please understand it. That why they have to talk about the anti-corruption measures and why they have to talk about the parliamentary oversight. This Regulating Act is coming in 1773. I said you there was an artificial famine in 1770. Now, the East India Company is not getting the profit. Indians are at loss. Both are at the loss. But who is at the profit? The Britishers in India. The East India Company workers in India. The East India Company officers in India. They were doing corruption. All the profit that was being made, they were putting it inside their own pockets. And that is the reason why East India Company was not getting benefited there. And that is why they had to build this Regulating Act of 1773. So please understand one basic reason why the anti-corruption measures, why the Regulating Act of 1773, because of this corruption. That was a very important reason. Next, after the Regulating Act of 1773, we have the most important act, that is the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Pitt's India Act established the dual control system that governed India until 1858. Okay, so it will go till the 1857. You know, there is this first war of independence or the Mutiny, whatever you want to call it. So what was there in the Pitt's India Act? A 6-member board headed by a Secretary of State to oversee political and military affairs. Acha, Was after the Regulating Act of 1773, was the corruption curbed totally? No, it was not curbed totally. That's why you are having this Pitt's India Act of 1784. There is this court of directors that will retain control over commercial activities and day-to-day administration. Separation of functions is there. Clear distinction between the commercial and political activities of the company. And the Governor General's enhanced powers. Council reduced to 3 members with greater authority in matters of war, revenue, and diplomacy. So this is something that you should remember. Okay. Now, which Charter Act allowed Christian missionaries to legally preach in India? Sir, you have yet not said us. But what it is? Well, you have to take a guess because we are just going to read about it now. What is the correct answer? As the Charter Act of 1813. Let's see what was there in the Charter Act of 1813. The Charter Act of 1793 had renewed the East India Company's charter for 20 years, and then by 1813, pressure from British industrialists and investigators led to the demands for ending the company's monopoly and promoting Christian missionary activities in India. So, Charter Act of 1813, please remember, it is important for the fact that Christian missionary activities in India were promoted. Ended the East India Company's trade monopoly in India, except for trade in tea and with China. India's trade war was now open to the other British merchants. So, other British companies and other British merchants are also allowed to come to India now. Territorial control retained. The company retained its political and administrative functions in India. Educational provision was given. It was for the very first time. Directed the company to spend 1 lakh rupees annually for the promotion of education in India. But was it going to happen as it was said? No. Because the Britishers never truly cared for Indians. All they cared was for themselves. Legal jurisdiction expansion. British subjects in India became subject of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court even outside the presidency towns. Now the next question for you. The Governor General of India was created by which act? Now I'm not talking about the Governor General of Bengal. Here we are talking about Governor General of India. Okay. Yet we have yet not read it, but what is the correct answer? It is 1833. And let's see what was exactly there in the Charter Act of 1833. So, the Industrial Revolution had strengthened demands for free trade. British government began to see India as a governable colony. Now, ended the East India Company's monopoly in tea and with China, the company completely ceased its commercial functions and became purely an administrative body. Now, created the post of Governor General of India. That was earlier Governor General of Bengal. Lord William Bentinck became the first to hold this title. He had authority over the entire British India. This is something significant that you should know. The Act gave the Governor General's Council the power to make laws for all British territories in India, and a law commission was constituted under Lord Macaulay to codify Indian laws, led to the Indian Penal Code 1860. Okay, and opened civil services to all British citizens, removing the East India Company's privileged recruitment system, though Indians were still de facto excluded. So please understand, civil services has been open to all British citizens. At first, it was only for the East India Company, but now all the Britishers. But what about Indians? Indians are still excluded from it. Okay, let's next see the Charter Act of 1853. What is there in this Charter Act of 1853? So the Charter Act of 1833 had centralized governance and ended the East India Company's trade function. By 1853, increasing administrative challenges and growing pressure for reform, especially in civil services and legislation, necessitated another renewal of the company's charter. So the company's rule continued temporarily, unlike earlier charter acts which renewed after 20 years. You see, all the charters are renewing after 20 years. This act did not specify any time frame. For the first time, the legislative and the executive councils were separated. In the Governor General's Council, a new legislative council, that is the Indian Legislative Council, was created. The Legislative Council now had 6 new members, and with that we'll also see this body was a miniature parliament, though still largely advisory. Introduced open competitive exam for recruitment into the Indian civil services for the first time in theory. This was a shift from patronage to merit. Macaulay Committee 1854, the Macaulay Committee implemented this. Macaulay is also very important. You should know about him because still today the education system that's there in India, it's based on Macaulay's system. The act provided representation to Bombay, Madras, Bengal and Northwest provinces in the Central Legislative Council of that time. Okay. Now, next is the Izaredari system. Now, what is this Izaredari system? And this system replaced the old Jamindari system. Now, what was Jamindari system? Jamindari system basically is where the Jamindars will collect the revenues, and those revenues will be given to the Diwans, and from the Diwans it will be passed on to the Nawab of Bengal or to the Mughal Emperor. Now, Ijaredari system, it was to be auctioned. Supposingly, this is a land, this is a farmland, okay, this is a land, okay. Now, there are three persons, they will come to auction. They will say, I'll give 10,000, someone will say, I'll give 20,000, someone will give 50,000. I'll say, okay, 50,000, you get it. Now, Ijaredari system at first it was given for the 5 years time. Later on, it was seen that this is not giving us the profit, then it was done for 1 year time also. Okay. So the land was auctioned to the highest bidder by Ijaredar, who got exclusive right to collect taxes for 5 years. Existing Jamindars were replaced by these contractors. The only criteria was the highest revenue bid without regard for the practical agriculture. Now here there was an issue. What was the issue? What if they are only 20,000? Don't forget, don't talk in the place of money. Let's talk in the sense of what if there is only 100 kg of rice can be cultivated from that field, okay, and that person is saying that I'll give 90 kg of rice to the Britishers, okay, that's good. 90 kg of rice is given. Not 10 kg which is left, that person, that Ijaredar, he is also going to get something from that 10 kg. Na? If he is going to take that 10 kg, 90 kg is given to the Britishers. What is the peasant left with? What is the farmer left with? So that was a very minus point of this Ijaredari system. And sometimes there will be crop failure, sometimes there will be drought. At that time, what will happen? These peasants, these farmers have to borrow money from the money lenders, and that was taking them deep below into the poverty at that time. Shortcomings of Ijaredari system: many Ijaredars failed to meet revenue targets due to the bidding beyond actual production. So production is 50 kg, they are saying I'll give you 100 kg. From where you'll give 100 kg? A frequent defaults led to annual settlements from 1777, but the exploitative structure remained. Okay, so it started to be in the annual settlement, but that system also failed. Now, impact on farmers: Ijaredars having paid a high price extracted as much as possible from the present regardless of poor harvest, leading to huge distress. This I already said you. So next will be permanent settlement. Okay, Ijaredari system failed. Now there will be a permanent settlement. Why permanent settlement is known as permanent settlement? You should first know that Lord Cornwallis implemented this permanent settlement. Now, it was implemented in the parts of Bengal, Bihar, Odisha and parts of Madras. Now, actually what is happening, please understand here. Jamindars were granted permanent ownership rights to the land. Okay. Why it is said permanent settlement? Because they are given permanent ownership right of the land, and there is a permanent amount also that is to be given. That amount is also fixed. Land revenue was fixed permanently at 10th or 11th of the rental value going to the company. So because they are fixing the revenue, now you are in 2025. Supposing you are fixing the revenue for anything, take an example, 1 lakh rupees. So you will also think in your mind that 2030 or 2040, 1 lakh will be less. I should put it 5 lakh rupees. 5 lakh from the context of 2040, from the context of 2050 is right. But from the context of 2025, it is not right. But because they have fixed, because they know now it is going to be permanent, we can't change it, they tried to give utmost revenue at that time, utmost tax will be taken. Sunset clause: if revenue payment was delayed beyond sunset on the specified date, estates will be auctioned. Okay, so on that very date, supposedly on 30th of August, you have to pay it. On 30th of August, it became sunset. Now you have your land will be auctioned. Absentee landlordism, many zamindars moved to cities, delegating responsibilities to the intermediaries. Peasant exploitation, cultivators became tenants with no security, and sub-infeudation, that is the creation of multiple layers of intermediaries between the state and cultivation. So permanent settlement, was it going to work? No, even it did not work as it was expected. Next will come the Ryotwari system. Now, what was this Ryotwari system? In 1820, it was imposed by Thomas Munro. Now, individual ownership rights or the cultivators were recognized as landowners with direct dealing with the government. So, for the very first time, government has decided that we are not going to get dependent on these intermediaries like the Jamindars, Izaredars, okay, or the Divans. We are going to go direct to the cultivators. Revenue rates, that is the tax, range from 45 to 55% of the estimate production, with higher rates for irrigated land and flexibility. Revenue assessment could be adjusted based on actual production. Challenges and drawbacks. Revenue demand often reached 50 to 60% of the produce. Now the GST today, if you see, on some goods it is 18%, but on some goods you see it was told to be 28%. Also there are some sin goods or the luxurious item which is 40%. Normally it is 5 to 18%. 5 to 18% is also not very low, but at that time you just imagine 50 to 60%, and 50 to 60%, it's not the luxurious goods. So it was very high at that time. Money lenders exploitation, high taxes forced cultivators into debt cycles, and the land's insecurity, failure to pay taxes resulted in the land confiscation at that time. Now next will come the Mahalwari system, that will come in 1822, introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822 and refined under Robert Martins Burt. The Mahalwari system was implemented in northwestern provinces. What was the key aspects of this Mahalwari system? First and foremost, please understand what is this Mahal. Mahal is basically the villages. Okay, so revenue assessed on the entire villages or the mahals rather than individual holding. So whatever the complete revenue from a village will come, that was estimated. Community ownership, villages collectively owned land while individual held rights to specific plots. Headman collection, village headman, that is the Lambardar, collected and transmitted revenue, and the periodic revision, that is unlike permanent settlement, assessments were revised under 20 to 30 years. Now administrative challenges, if you see, implementation complexity, that is the required detailed documentation of individual rights within villages. Revenue burden was there, initial assessment at 66%, rental value was later reduced to 50%, and cost effectiveness was also there. Administrative cost often exceeded revenue which was collected at that time. Now, so these were all the revenue related reforms that we have seen. It is very important from your exams perspective. Now let's see the judicial and police reforms at that time. So the Warren Hastings period, if you see, dual court system was there, established district Diwani Adalats for civil cases and district Faujdari Adalats for the criminal cases. Also the Nijamat Adalat, sometimes it is known as. Mixed legal framework, combined British common law with traditional Hindu and Muslim personal law at that time. And the judicial hierarchy created appellate structure with Sardar courts at presidency level. Now the Cornwallis reforms, what we do there? Separation of powers, distinguish between executive and judicial function at district level. European judges will be there, ensure British control over high judicial positions, and legal codification, that is the begin systematic codification of Indian laws at that time. Police system evolution, if you see, pre-1857 structure, traditional officers retained posts like Kotwal, Thanedar and Daroga from the Mughal system. Cornwallis reform created Thana-based system with British supervision, and the quasi-military organization, that is police force, structured along military lines in frontier regions. Functions and characteristics, if you see, revenue collection, that is the police assisted in tax collection and land revenue enforcement. Political control, primary function was maintaining British authority under the public service, and the discriminatory justice, separate legal system for the Europeans and Indians at that time. Okay, so the legal system was not same for the same crime committed. Okay, at that time it was different for Indians and it was different for the Britishers. Now, the economic impact and transformations, if you see, high tariffs were there. British goods entered India duty-free, while Indian exports faced heavy tariffs in Britain. Raw material export, India forced to export cotton, silk and other raw material at very low prices. Manufactured imports, that cheap British machine goods flooded Indian markets. And the loss of patronage, that is the decline of indigenous court, reduced demand for traditional crafts at that time. So in a way, what I said you at the very beginning, that Indians were forced to give their tax, Indians were forced to give their crops, Indians were forced to suffer, and also Indian goods were bought very cheaply. But any good, if it is coming from Britain to India, it is coming duty free. It is not being asked to pay any taxes. And you can understand it if you are following the tariff of America over India. And if you are not yet seeing it, we have covered it in our classes. You can also see it there. Now, the next is the drain of wealth theory. Now, Dadabhai Naroji's analysis is there. What is actually this drain of wealth theory? I'll say in very simple language. When British came to India, before that it is believed that India was having a market all over the world, which was 25 to 30% of the world GDP was India's. Okay, some people also say that it was much more than that, but we're just talking in that sense. But it is said that when they left India, it came in single digit, and that also very low. So Britishers, before Britishers came to India, India was quite very wealthy. Everyone around the world wanted to come to India. And why India was wealthy? Because Indians did not wanted any goods from outside. But outside people wanted goods from India. So what happened in that case? Everybody is giving gold to you and you are giving the goods. You are not purchasing the goods. When you are not purchasing the goods, so your gold will not go outside. But you are getting all the golds from outside. That was the reason. Anyways, so very quickly we'll just see home charges, payment to Britain for administrative expenses, military cost and debt serving. So we are paying to the Britain for what? Because of their administrative expenses, their military cost and their debt serving. Now it is just like you have came here to do business. Now you have forcefully tackled us. Okay, now you are ruling over us, and now you are also asking that my payment also the Indians will pay. How right it is? Just think about it. Private remittances like salaries, pensions and profits that were sent by British officials and investors, this was also Indian money. Trade surplus appropriation, profits from India's favorable trade balance redirected to whatever the profit was, it was not invested in India, it was not kept in India's bank. Investment returns, dividends and interest on British investment in Indian infrastructure, that was also given to the Britishers at that time. Annual drain estimated 50 crore by the late 19th century, constituted nearly 6% of India's national income, represented 1/3 of India's national savings, and financed approximately 2% of Britain's national income during early industrialization at that time. Now, this can be much higher also. Now, commercialization of agriculture was there. British did not care about who is eating or not eating. They just wanted that the money should come. And that is why you'll see the cash crop focus will be there. Emphasis on cotton, indigo, opium and jute, because they can be used for export. Market integration, railway construction connected interior region to ports. Many people in India still say that we got the railways because of the British, but Britishers did not invent the railways. They did not make the railways infrastructure for Indians. They did it for their own comfort. Price volatility, farmers became vulnerable to international market fluctuation, and food security decline, reduction in food grain cultivation led to increased famine vulnerability at that time. Hello, Shraddha explains. Macaulay's Minute 1835. Now, this is very important. Thomas Babington Macaulay, educational policy fundamentally altered India's intellectual landscape. So, before Macaulay, what was there in India? In India, the education system was very prominent. But after Macaulay, what happened? Macaulay wanted that the Indians should forget their teaching system. The Indians should forget their culture, their heritage, and they should accept what? They should accept British culture. They should accept British education. Why? So that they start thinking in alignment with the Britishers. Okay, and that is why you will see English medium, establishment of English as the medium of instruction started in schools and colleges, promotion of European literature and science over traditional learning, creation of an English educated Indian elite to serve as an intermediary, and diversion of funds from Sanskrit and Arabic institution to the English school. Now, if you will not give fund to the Sanskrit and the Arabic school, how they will survive? They will not be able to survive. Okay, so these were few of the things. There are some important more points. Let's see the Macaulay Minute of 1835. This is very important, which endorsed English medium education and Western curricula to create a class of English educated Indians to act as intermediaries. The downward filtration theory, where educating a few elite would eventually filter Western knowledge to the masses. And this is very important, downward filtration theory. Okay, the contribution of figures like James Thomson, founder of IIT Roorkee, who supported technical and vernacular education, and the Woods Dispatch of 1854, which further promoted English education and laid foundation for the modern education system in India. The overall impact and limitation of colonial education policy before 1857. When you talk about the implementation and the impact, the government declaration of 1835, Lord William Bentinck officially adopted Macaulay's recommendation. Official language English became the court language in 1837, and still you see in many of the courts in India, English, rather it should be the regional language. That's where Hindi is spoken, it should be Hindi, where Tamil is spoken, it should be Tamil, where Telugu, it should be Telugu, because the common man should understand. Still today in Supreme Court, you see, it is not done in the regional language. It is done always in the English. This is something that should be looked. Administrative recruitment, high government positions reserved for English educated Indians, and cultural transformations, if you see, created a class of Indians, English in taste, opinions, morals, and intellect at that time. The Woods Dispatch of 1854, you will see it is also related to education. It is also known as the Magna Carta of English education in India, was a comprehensive education policy proposed by Sir Charles Wood, President of the Board of Control of the British East India Company. Now, it laid the foundation of Indian education system, educational structure. It proposed a coordination system of education ranging from primary school to universities, aiming to spread Western education at this time, using English as the medium in higher education and vernacular languages in primary school. Now, here is this difference that you should remember, that the Woods Dispatch talked about the vernacular languages in the primary school and English as the medium in higher education. Department and institution, it recommended the establishment of Department of Public Instructions in each provinces, and universities were also established. Dispatch led to the creation of universities in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras in 1857. This is very important. Okay. Now, the grants and private participation, it introduced a grants in aid system to encourage the private enterprise. Focus on practical knowledge and female education. You'll also see the language policy, where English was the promoted primarily for higher education at that time, while vernacular language was encouraged at the primary level. Role of the government, declared education of the Indian people a government responsibility, and long-term impact, if you see, although many recommendations were implemented progressively, Western education expanded, some were delayed or only partially included at that time. Okay, now let's see the social reformer legislation at that time. Abolition of sati will happen in 1829, Bengal Sati Regulation Act by Lord William Bentinck. Widow remarriage 1856, Hindu Widows Remarriage Act piloted by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar at that time. Here with Lord William Bentinck, you should also remember Raja Ram Mohan Roy. And child marriage initial regulation 1891, age of consent act raised consent as for girls from 10 to 12 years at that time. So before, it was child marriage was allowed till 10 years. Now it has been raised to 12 years. We are talking of 1891, not of 2025. So don't be confused. Okay, now the limitation, the cultural disruption under mining the traditional and the social structure without adequate replacement. Okay, so sometimes you see people don't like that, you know, somebody comes and uh, creates a distinction in their religion, in their culture. Elite focus benefits primarily reached urban English educated classes, and the missionary activities created social tension, so they were also trying to promote Christianity at that time. So because of all these things, you will see that it's a mixed bag. There are many important topics. We have seen all the regulating acts that were there. It's very important for your exams. Macaulay Minute and Woods Dispatch is very important for your exam. And the part where we are talking about the economic reforms, that is also very important for your exam. So if you want the PDF of these classes for free, you can join the Shikara Academy Telegram channel. And if you have any question, you can also call us on this numbers. Okay. Now, let's see a few of the questions and whether we can answer these questions or not. So let's get started. Which of the following was a key provision of the Regulating Act of 1773? Remember, Governor General of Bengal with Executive Council was there or not? Yes. So number A should be the correct answer here. You can pause the video to see the explanation, or also I've said you already that you can get the PDF. The Mahalwari system made the entire village jointly responsible for paying land revenue. Yes, we saw that Mahal means the village. So this is correct. The British wanted to reduce their administrative cost in revenue collection. This is also very correct. They did not wanted to go one-on-one to every peasant or to one-on-one to every jamindar. Rather, the complete village will come. So both A and R are correct, and R is the correct explanation of A. Okay, you can see the explanation here. Arrange the following events in the correct chronological order. So it must start with the Pitt's India Act, and then it should come to the permanent settlement. Yes, abolition of sati, and then the Charter Act of 1833. Next is the Charter Act of 1813 ended the company's trade monopoly in India except for tea and China trade. Yes, that's true. The act also allocated funds for promotion of education in India. Yes, 1 lakh rupees. It allowed the establishment of first legislative council in India. No, number 3 is not right. 1 and 2 is only correct. Okay. Legislative council happened under the Charter Act of 1853. Now, last question, the permanent settlement of 1793 led to the absentee landlordism in Bengal. Yes. Jamindars were assured of permanent revenue rates and ownership, giving them freedom to live away from their states. This is also correct. So both A and R are correct, and R is the correct explanation of A. With that, we have come to the end of this class. But if you are a serious aspirant preparing for UPSC, TSPSC, or APPSC examination, I'll strengthfully, I'll just recommend you that you should go for this one-on-one live mentorship by Deepika ma'am. Deepika ma'am is having 20 plus years of experience, and she has guided hundreds of aspirants into administrative services. Nothing goes away if you call on this number and inquire for more, and keep working hard, keep giving your best. Today or tomorrow, you will be successful for sure. Thank you so much. Namaskaram.